Hello everyone, I hope you are well. Today I'll be covering the first theme of Learning Unit 2, which is on identity and socialization. We are starting with looking at the individual and elements of identity construction. So today, hopefully, we'll be able to discuss the theories of socialization and identity, explain the agents of socialization by making use of examples, as well as explaining the concept of social identity. In the next few recordings, we will look at culture, we'll look at race, as well as gender. So when we're talking about socialization, we're just looking at, or rather socialization just refers to the idea of having interactions with different people in society, in different institutions, and those interactions build the person that you are. So the things that you're familiar with, you will adopt as part of your identity, and they'll form part of your identity. And the things that you do not resonate with or that you do not identify with, you will leave out. So we interact with different people who bring bits and pieces of themselves in our lives, and with that, it helps shape our identity as a whole. So when we are looking at socialization, the question always comes, is socialization a result of nature or is it a result of nurture? So as sociologists, when we look at socialization, and as much as we acknowledge the role that nature plays, as you will see that the likes of your Herbert Mead will have said that it is through human interactions that meaning and understanding is derived. That already gives you an understanding that as sociologists, we look at the nurture aspect of it because we rely on observable actions, right? And then we, in as much as we acknowledge that nature does play a role in identity formation, or rather socialization in itself, we still essentially just rely on nurture because we are looking at observable behaviors. The theories of socialization or rather of socialization, are structural functionalism, who believe that society is made up of institutions, and institutions are made up of individuals. So these institutions in society, they shape the people that we are, but in return, we also shape the institutions in society. And then we have the conflict perspective, who believe that socialization occurs because of the impact of social change and social differences as well. And then the one that I'm introducing to you for the first time is symbolic interactionism, which believes that socialization is the major determinant of human nature rather. Right. So when you're looking at symbolic interactionist perspective, this is a micro perspective, unlike the conflict perspective and the structural functionalism. So it is a micro perspective in the sense that it conducts its research, or rather it looks at the interactions between smaller groups of people, between one-on-one interactions. So that is why it is more of a micro perspective, in that it conducts its research on smaller groups of people. So we highlight those smaller interactions when we are looking at socialization or identity and socialization, because we are trying to understand whether socialization could be the result of, or could be the determining factor of people's identity, how people become at the end of the day. So all of these theories that you're going to be looking at of identity and socialization are symbolic interactionist theorists. So the first one would be Mead and the social self, which is called understanding the other. So Mead is the first symbolic interactionist theorist, and he looked mostly on the first interactions that we had as humans. So the understanding is that all things that are on this earth are animals, or all creatures rather are animals. So in as much as we are animals, we as humans understand ourselves. We have the conscious ability to understand that we are different from the animals, right? So because of that, we then came up to now having to build or develop a sense of communicating with one another that is different to what humans do. And in that, we realized that the first part of it was in understanding the conversations that we had through gestures before language even came about, right? So before language came about, what we used to do would communicate through gestures. So just like what a child would do or a baby would do before they start talking. When they want to eat, they will communicate through crying, and you will realize that this baby is hungry, and they have different types of crying as well. If the baby is sleepy, they will cry differently. If the baby is bored and wants some entertainment, as babies do, they'll cry differently as well. So you as a parent will start learning how a baby communicates. So you'll understand the different cries to understand what action to take with the baby, whether to feed them, to make them sleep, or whatever the case, right? So this looks at, with Mead, he looked at the conversations that we used to have before language came about. And he conducted his research, or he looked at an example of the way that dogs fought. And he established that the way that dogs communicate with one another would be one dog growling or barking at the other dog. So this dog receiving this information, they would either bark back to show that they are willing to fight, or they will run away. So that is an action and also a reaction part of it, right? So with Herbert Mead, he realized that the way in which we communicate is an action that will receive a reaction as a result, right? And that was the first point of it. And he realized that the way that we communicate with one another, building up to language as well, is quite interesting, because we start realizing that we are a unique human being. There is me as the self, as the person, and there's also us as a community, or us as a people. So you understand your individual spot or position in society, but realizing that you form part of a society in as much as you are your own unique self. So as humans, we relate to each other because we are understanding of the fact that we are all humans, but we just have our own unique features and our own unique way of doing things. Then we have another theorist, symbolic interactionist theorist, which is Irving Goffman, and his presentation of the self in everyday life. So Irving Goffman conducted his research, or his theory rather, is based on looking at people and their behaviors and the way they do things, looking at a setting of a theatrical drama or theatrical setting. So his understanding of how identity is formed, or identity and socialization, he looked at it from a dramaturgical way, right? So his understanding of the way that we behave is based on where we find ourselves, right? So we find ourselves in different places, in different environments, and those different environments will dictate how we behave or how we present ourselves. So he looked at performance, the audience, setting, props, and costumes, as well as the stage. And this is how he says we present ourselves in everyday life. So there's a performance that we put up depending on which environment we find ourselves in. If I was to give an example of if I was to give an example of a classroom setting, a lecturer will perform their role as a lecturer to the audience, being the students. So the students will receive the lecturer as the lecturer. So each will assume their respective roles accordingly. So there will be the audience being the students, there will be the lecturer being the performer, and the setting thereof would be the classroom. So the props and the costumes that will be used will be obviously the tools that we use, our laptops, our projectors and so on, and presenting our content to the audience, right? And there is what he calls stage. So in stage, it's divided into three. There's the front stage, backstage, and off stage. And so he believed that front stage would be where you have all your different masks on and you're presenting your best self so that the audience can receive you in that way as well. So they will be able to see the person that you show them to be, right? So the front stage will be where you are performing to an audience. And when we're talking about backstage, backstage, that's the part where you are not necessarily of your mask. There are still masks that are there, but at the same time, you're still presenting more of yourself than you would in front stage. And then off stage, that is where all these different masks are off completely, and this is where you are your true self, right? And this usually happens when we are alone. So this is where off stage happens, where we are presenting the person that we are fully, without any limits, without any fear of being shamed or anything of that nature. So he looked at his, or the way that we present ourselves in this huge theatrical stage. So he believed that life is a huge theatrical stage where we present ourselves based on the environment that we find ourselves in. So I'm going to ask you guys to please read on Charles Coley, which is the Looking Glass Self, social constructivism, as well as structuration theory. Those theories form part of the symbolic interactionist perspectives, and they are important for you to note. So I'm going to then look at the agents of socialization, as it's giving us a definition of socialization here. It says it is the process of learning the norms and values of a society. So socialization is the process of learning the norms and values of a society through different interactions with different individuals, as well as the different institutions in society. So when I say the different institutions in society, these are the agents of socialization, the institutions that help us to learn these different values and norms of society. So the first and primary agent of socialization is the family. The secondary one is the school. So the family will teach you the basic norms, values, and belief systems, and that is your foundation. So because they have the foundation, that will have the first 5 to 6 years of your life, depending on when you start your preschooling career. And then there is the secondary agent of socialization, which is the school, because they continue to teach you those values and belief systems. And then there's the peer group, the mass media, as well as work and employment. So all of these agents of socialization are important in building the person that you are and building your identity, essentially. So that is it from me. I hope you understood this short session. When I record the next session, it will be on culture and identity. That's it from me for now, guys. Bye.